Warm welcome and greetings. I am Dr. Prabhat Kumar Vishwakarma, Professor in Artificial Intelligence and Data Science. Today, the lecture delivery will be on the basic concepts related with database management system, and that's why the topic that has been chosen here is DBMS fundamentals. So, in the very first slide, I have simply mentioned the outlines, and these are as meaning of data, how it is related with database. Ultimately, then after we shall define the DBMS and its working environment. In fact, it is also quite interesting to understand how database and file systems are related, what there are the comparisons as well as contrast. It is also interesting to understand the characteristics of database management system approaches. As in the real world, especially in the industries, database management system related softwares are mostly being used. Definitely it will have some advantages, so that will also be the point of discussion. So we already are being familiar with data. In fact, data, the word that we use, it's a plural word. It's a singular form as datum. So we all know that data is all the raw facts and figures, the signals, the symbols, the images, the sounds, everything are termed as data. These data are how related with database. Let's try to understand. So we are here trying to relate the data with database. The moment we define database, it is simply defined as a shared collection. And here what matters a lot, that the data should be logically interrelated, and there should be the availability of the description of the data. Some of the examples that we are familiar with in our real life, like library catalog, telephone directory, the attendance register, the faculties, those usually used while marking the attendance in the classroom. These are all the example of database. So what can we say? Database is nothing but the collection of logically related, interrelated data. What matters here, that there should be shared collection, logical relationship is needed, and the data that we are using, there should be a description of this data. And the description of data, why does it matter? Because of data independence. So this is what database is being defined. Once we could understand data, its relationship with database, now formally we shall define the database management system. So database management system is a software package, or we may say it's a general purpose software system that will facilitate some kind of processing, that is the processes for the purpose of defining, constructing and manipulating the database required for various applications. If we say defining a database, it simply means We have to specify what data types, its structure, and what constraints we are going to impose into the stored data that are being related in the form of database. Constructing the database is the process of storing the data itself on some storage medium, and manipulating the database, we require to perform certain functions like how to retrieve the specific data, how should we make the changes into the data, keeping in view what reports we have to generate, keeping in view our mini world. So these are the real definition of database. Let's move further. Some of the examples, it's quite interesting to understand some of the examples of database management system softwares. The softwares which are being used nowadays are MS Access, MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, and many more. Here, for our demonstration purpose in the college, we usually follow Oracle software for understanding the concept of database management system. So let's have a look of the database system environment. In the very outer rectangular box, at the very top, what are we observing? That users or programmers are there. They will have the interaction with the database systems. Database system will comprise of application program in the form of various queries. Then it will be interacted with the DBMS related software, and these softwares will have two purpose: to process the queries, the software related with processing the queries, and software that is needed for accessing the stored data. Stored data as well as actual data that is being used for sake of database management systems. There are two kind of data. One database that is stored, and another one is what data, what database we have made for storing the database, that is also called as metadata. Sometimes we call it as a data about data. So this is all logically how user will be interacted with database management system software, and how the queries will be performed, how will the queries will be even internally operational, and the required results we shall be able to get. This is what database system environment. See, actually database management systems are having various kind of data models, and one of the very popular data model is relational data model. So this example have actually been taken from relational data model, and in relational data model, all the database is supposed to get stored into the tabular form, and that's why we are just observing that where there are various tables like course, section, grade, then prerequisites, and all the and in these tables some columns. In fact, later on we may will understand all these column names like course name, the very first table, course, comprising of course name, then we have course numbers, credit hours, and department. These are all having a very special name in database management system, and that is called as attributes. So corresponding to these attributes, if we only represent the course name, course number, credit hours, and department, these are known as a database schema. And once we enter the values, so that is also called as the database state. And these are some of the snapshots of the database management system. Let's have again move toward the characteristics of database management system. What is interesting to know here about database management system is that It's have a self-describing nature of a database system. Why are we saying that self-describing nature is there? Because of one of the very important and peculiar quality that is called as metadata. Because the way we shall store all the data to make the data to be related with each other, all the related informations will again be into the form of the table itself, and that's why the data, the attributes that we will use for storing the data will again be into the form of the same data model in which we have to apply it. That's why, because of this description of metadata, we call this database system to be as a of nature self-describing. Another thing which is very interesting, that for sake of reducing the computational complexities, another feature is that is called as insulation between program and data. And if there is uh, proper separation between program and data, that is called as program data independence. That program or logics are totally independent to that of where the database is being stored finally. And in fact, if you will look at the environment of database management system, what are we finding? Let's have a look again. Like what are we finding? That user will be performing the queries, and these queries again will be entering into the DBMS environment, and in DBMS environment the software which will strictly be following related with the DBM to perform the DBMS queries, and then it will be interacted with the stored informations, and those stored informations may be categorized further into the form of metadata, as well as actually the data that will be used for the application. Okay, so self-describing nature and insulation between program data, these are the characteristics. Some more characteristics we shall have look upon that. Data abstraction. So data abstraction simple means that we have to simply hide the background details, and that's why we call data abstraction to be as a kind of concept that is being used in the data model to hide the storage details. Only the required informations are supposed to be provided at all. And another very important feature, characteristics of database management system is it supports multiple views of the data. Means every user will have different queries, different kind of information to be taken from the database that is being maintained, and that's why this database management system supports multiple views of the data. Uh, so after database support and data abstraction, multiple views. Here also it's quite interesting to understand that the sharing of data and multi-user transaction processing is also one of the feature or characteristics of database management system. It means concurrency. Like suppose in a multi-user environment, more than one user at a time are working together, and they're making subtle changes into the database. So how these database in fact finally be changing without compromising with the consistency, this is also one of the very important feature, and that we usually call it as a concurrency control. And what recovery systems we usually will be opting in database. Online transaction processing is also one of the very important application of the database applications. And in online transaction processing, simple means if more than one transactions by various users are taking place, ultimately what changes has to be reflected, when should be reflected, should it be reflected or not, all these things are being taken care by one of the specific kind of processing known as online transaction processing. So now here I try to even compare database with the file system. Some of the very basic things already we could understand with the characteristics of the database itself, but let's have a comparison of file management system or file system to that of database system. If you talk about file management, we basically are concerned with the programming language like C++, and earlier there was a programming language like COBOL, that is common business oriented language, and these are all related with managing the files. And in fact, comparatively that database management system the software example that we may take like Oracle and MySQL and MS Access that already had seen earlier, and the same we are being trying to compare it. And as per applicability is concerned, file management is quite relatively cheap, but at the initial level of even going for database management, it's quite expensive. Uh, uh, the structure of file management is very simple, whereas as a DBMS has to work in a multi-user and multitasking environment, and most of the resources are required to be shared, so it makes the entire process to be a bit complex. So here in file management, very little designing aspects are being concerned, but in database management system, relatively most of the aspects are required to be designed. Means here the task of some of the persons, those who are especially being designated for designing the database, like database designers, they will have to do some rigorous activities. In fact, in a true sense, to finalize the database. Security is, of course, the data. If we have the database, the data should be secured enough. Otherwise, how can we rely on the data? So security is not very much focused in file management, whereas in database management, security has been taken into consideration. So all the data related with database are quite secure. Oftenly, file management systems are single user kind of approach to be followed there, but in database management, multi-user and sharing aspects are being there. In file management, the data basically are in nature isolated. Here, the data in database management are shared. Backup mechanism are very simple, but here the backup mechanism is quite complicated, because keeping in view the sensitivity and relevance of the data, we require to even safeguard it from accidental damage or accidental crash of the data. So here the backup has to be taken in a very sophisticated manner. So this is what some of the basic comparison between database to that of file system we could understand. So let's have again the advantages while using database management system. So the very first one is controlling redundancy. Redundancy at the very basic level we may understand to be like we should minimize or optimize the duplicacy of the data, because as much as duplicacy of the data will be there, it will be increasing the space complexity, and searching of the data, authentic data searching will also be quite complicated. So that's why this feature has been added here as an advantage in DBMS. Database is being shared by multiple users, means at a time more than one users may work together. This is also one of the very important advantage of database. Unauthorized access, because the security has also been taken into the consideration. So unauthorized access is being restricted here in database management system. It provides persistent storage. Persistent storage reason being that because we are focused toward making a big database, and for big database, data means is required to be stored for a long time. So persistent storage of the data itself is being needed, and as much as the nature and size of the data will be there, I think this will also be sufficient enough to perform different kind of queries. And for queries, the structured query languages, a kind of a high level language is there. Sometimes we call that to be as a non-procedural language. It has a very specific structure, like select from where, and all kind of queries are being performed, and users may get different kind of data from the same database that is being stored into the storage medium. So backup and recovery is also very important services as an advantage. Multiple interfaces for different classes of users. Here also it is quite interesting to understand the kind of users that are there in database management system, like database designer, database administrator, then parametric users are there. sophisticated users are there, casual users are there. So interfaces are being provided keeping in view that what level of data access is supposed to be given to the users. On the basis of that, various interfaces are being provided here. uh, Data, see, the data actually is being related with each other, so kind of relationship has been established over there. And since the entire database is not only confined with some single table, but more than one tables are there, and they all are required to be connected in such a way so that we may maintain a kind of concept that is called as a integrity constraint. Like if some data we are changing, so that changes is required to be reflected in all the tables related with that information. And if data base will have the exact integrity constraints, so to get some to draw some inferences as well as actions will be quite easy, and we may easily be able to get some deductive information by using certain rules. So thank you all. So I'll simply be now closing my discussion, and hope you would have definitely been enjoyed this session. Thank you and have a nice day to you all.